All right, what's up, folks? Welcome back to the Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel. We're here today for some DraftKings MMA DFS, UFC Vegas 28 card, best bets, picks, lineup advice, FanDuel tips, you name it. We're here to break down this 14 fight card for tonight's UFC fights. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. And I'm joined today, like I am always, on these Saturday streams by Mr. Jake the Snake at DFS_MMA, owner of MMA DFS.com, writer of our daily plug. Jake, what's happening, dude?
Not a whole lot, man. Got that week off. Got some extra time to prepare. Love this slate. Fingers crossed, no late changes. But yeah, good to be here, man.
Absolutely. So we'll be here for about 30 minutes or so. We got the early lock today at 4 p.m. Eastern. So we're doing the show a little early, but we're going to break down this main event between Rozenstruik and Sakai. We're going to talk about any newcomers. There's 3 fighters making their UFC debut today, what to expect from them, what their fighting styles are like, fights that we want to target, low-owned fighters to target in our tournament lineups, and then our favorite FanDuel MVPs. And, of course, we're going to close it out with eventually we will hit a stream parlay, and we'll talk about Jake's best bets throughout the entire show. Just a quick reminder, if you have questions, ask them in the chat to the right of the screen. If you want to read more, check out MMADFS.com for Jake's The Sheet. Check out our daily plug. I'm going to bring it up here on screen, OccupyFantasy.com. Jake's top plays, lineup strategies, and best bets for tonight's card. And then our Occupy model, let's bring it up really quickly. Yep, there it is. Ranks every fighter, FanDuel, and DraftKings with projected ownership. So let's see. We got some people in the chat. We got Carl, T Nasty, Peter, bunch of people in there. What's up, guys? So if you have questions, go ahead and ask it in the chat. We are running the contest. I'll announce that here in a bit once we get some more people in the live stream. So stay tuned for that. So Jake, let's go back to the main event here. I'm gonna pull it up on screen. Rozenstruik and Sakai. For those of you who are listening to this and have read the daily plug, you've read the sheet at MMADFS.com, you have a pretty good sense of what we expect from this main event. But Jake, talk to me about this heavyweight battle, what it means for DFS lineups.
Yeah, so this is we're predicting a lower volume. Everyone remembers the last fight with Rozenstruik with just the terrible staring contest for 5 rounds against Cyril Gane. Who knows? Maybe he'll bounce back. He claimed he's going to push forward more, but he's still, regardless, he's a low volume striker. He's not going to get any grappling, so he's super dependent on getting a round 1, maybe a late round 2 KO to perform well here. He hasn't scored well, in a 5-round decision or a 5-round KO. So it's definitely looking like a main event you can fade. But we still think it's going to be fairly popular. It'll be a little bit less owned by the field. Most people are smart enough to realize that there's a good chance it's not going to be a high-scoring main event. But both guys are still going to be really over-owned, so we get good leverage opportunity fading both of them. And I'm going to be super low on both. I'm expecting a low-volume fight. I could see Rozenstruik getting a KO in the first 2 rounds. But there's no guarantee a round 2 KO is going to be enough. So, you look at his round 1 KO odds, they're just 15%. You look at his projected ownership at 38%. For Sakai, 10% round 1 KO odds, 34% projected ownership. Really good chance that that both these guys bust. But, you'll want to have a little bit of Rozenstruik exposure. I'm basically fading Sakai. I don't know about you.
Yeah, to be fully honest, I have 0% Sakai in my 150 lineups. All my small field stuff, 0% Sakai. Because the way I looked at it, Jake, right? Again, it's dangerous to put fights in a vacuum and compare them to other fights. But in Rozenstruik's matchup against Ghana last time out, that's probably the ceiling in a 5-round decision for Sakai. Do you think Sakai throws more volume than Ghana did in that last fight? Because Ghana scored, 90, 100 points, and that's probably the absolute ceiling, and got a couple takedowns, too.
Right. I think the key is the takedowns. We don't expect Sakai to get any takedowns. So take away the 2 takedowns, and you're not looking at a very good score. And no, I don't think Sakai throws more volume than Cyril did in his last match.
So there you go. Low risk. We've been talking about this pretty much every show. I've been trying to get more into it lately, but low risk. We talk about stacking the main event, especially on DraftKings. Every time I think it's not an option, Jake, it still is in especially in these heavyweight 5-rounders. But again, this is one of those tougher ones where it's not an immediate, start your low risk lineup with the stack on the main event and then move on. It's really not that simple this time.
Yeah, for sure. That Font Garbrandt fight, we didn't think that was a stack. That ended up going 5 rounds, of course, somehow. But this is not going to be, like that. This isn't going to be a high volume fight. If it goes 5 rounds, There's not going to be a ton of volume. Sakai throws a decent amount of volume, but every fight Rozenstruik is in, there's no volume. I mean, he's just too dangerous, too patient. No one can get in like a high volume boxing match with him, because if they try, he'll probably knock him out.
Yeah, that's the big thing, knowing the opponent and knowing how the fight's going to play out. So, again, we're here till 2:30 p.m. Eastern. If you have questions about DFS, lineups, FanDuel, DraftKings, or bets for today, go and throw them in the chat. Jake, 3 newcomers on tonight's card, and we always like talking about the newcomers because we get some overlooked situations by the field sometimes. No real data for most of these newcomers, unless they were on the Contender Series. They don't have any actual stats that people can pull and use for projections. And so we have 3 new fighters today. I'm going to bring up the model. And this is sorted by DraftKings projected, it's sorted by DraftKings salary. And the 3 newcomers we have today, Jake, are we have Gregory Rodriguez against your boy Todorovic. We have Kamuela Kirk against Amrakani. And then we have the late replacement, Tabitha Ricci against Figueroa. So talk to me about Rodriguez, about Kirk, about Ricci, their fighting styles, and any chances they have today of cracking the optimal lineup.
Yeah, so I know you like Ricci a little bit. Coming up from 115 pounds, I think this is a really hard fight. I was super pissed that Moroz dropped out because I really liked Figueroa. Yeah, I think that's right. But I really liked her before, and she was like a 165 or negative 165 favorite. So she wasn't going to be crazy owned. She was going to be like 20% owned, super high chance she gets like a mid-round KO. That was going to be a high volume striking match, just like a complete brawl. Love that matchup. Of course, Moroz drops out like 2 hours after I get done writing up that fight. So in steps Ricci. She's moving up from 115 pounds. She's like a judo grappler. She's pretty good at 115 pounds, but this is a really, really tough matchup for her. She's only 5'2", going against the 5'7" Fiora. She's got a 3-inch reach disadvantage. I mean, she's just overall smaller, so she relies on controlling her opponents with strength, and I just think that's gonna be really hard for her to do here. But it's possible she ruins the fight, and because Fiora is mispriced, she's gonna be crazy high owned. I mean, we all know the drill. When you get someone, Fiora would be like 9,400 if the pricing came out in this current matchup. Instead, she's 8,500 on DraftKings, $18 on FanDuel, where they graciously allowed us to play her after trying to tell us they weren't going to yesterday, and kind of a shit show. But I don't know. I don't think Ricci's a great play, but obviously she's the best leverage play in the slate. So if somehow she can get Fiora down, she's got several round 1 armbar submissions. Fiora is a pure striker, like a karate-style striker. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe she gets a round 1 armbar. Super long shot, but I mean, you probably want to have a tiny bit of exposure. I think it's more likely she would ruin the fight opposed to win the fight. But, I mean, who knows? You want a little bit of exposure to Fiora. Obviously, to Ricci. Lock Fiora into cash lineups, have a good amount in tournaments.
Yeah, just real quick. So,
go ahead.
So small field contests, Fiora just lock her in, right? Just
right.
Minus 550, 560, depending on where you look, close to an 80, 90% chance of winning the fight. Probably going to score well. And, you're playing low risk, you're playing small field, just lock her in. Ricci, again, is really for large field contests only. She's going to be projected 6% on DraftKings. All you have to do is get 10% and you're double the field basically. But again, she is a huge underdog in a spot that is not one you want to target, up a weight class on short notice against an actual good opponent. So
right.
Just if you heard what Jake said about the FanDuel issue, just to clarify, there was a point this week where Fiora was not going to score any FanDuel points because the opponent changed. Ricci was not added to the player pool. Got confirmation today. Fiora will score points. So if you're playing FanDuel, you can play Fiora. You just can't play Ricci. She's not in the player pool. All right, Jake. Other 2 fighters, Kamuela Kirk, also a late replacement, and then Gregory Rodriguez against Todorovic. Both these guys were late replacements, right?
Yeah. They're all late replacements. Gregory Rodriguez fought 2 weeks ago. He won like a vacant belt in LFA. I think it was like 15 days ago. Took this fight on like 12 days notice. Dusko had a different opponent early on. And Rodriguez, people seem to be on him, man. Like, I couldn't believe that the Dushko line got bet down. I mean, I thought it was going to get bet up, but sometimes I guess if you look at Rodriguez's record, he's won like 8 of his last 9 fights. Like basically all of his fights end in the first 6 minutes, except for like a very rare decision here and there. He's been fighting complete bums. I mean, I think people need to realize that. Like that's the context here. He's been fighting like really, really low-level fighters, and when he went on Dana White's Contender Series, he got knocked out in like 2 minutes by Jordan Williams. You might remember undersized Jordan Williams, who was like basically fighting up a weight class because of his medical issues. Knocked Rodriguez out in 2 minutes, and give me Dushko any day over Jordan Williams in a fight. I mean that's always dangerous doing those 1-for-1 comps, but I mean that's kind of what we have to look at because that's the only UFC level fighter he's gone up against. Like the other guys, he's had just like huge size or skill advantages. Rodriguez definitely has power. He's a BJJ black belt, so he's decent on the ground. But he's kind of slow. He kind of telegraphs his punches. I don't think he's a great striker. He's got decent power, and he has somewhat of a ground game. So, I mean, I think he has a high ceiling here. I mean, as we saw in the last fight with Todorovic, like he got knocked out in the first round. He's got this hands-down style that lends itself to getting punched in the face, but he's also really good at being elusive and evading punches. So as long as he can do that, I think he picks Rodriguez apart and gets a finish in the first 2 rounds. But if Rodriguez can land something clean, then I think he's going to get a finish in the first 2 rounds. So, I mean, we'll talk about it later. It's a great fight to target, but I think Rodriguez is probably going to get knocked out early. But if he does win, he has a high ceiling.
Yeah, and just I mean, this is a spot we love, right? Todorovic was a guy you already circled like months ago when he was going to be on the card, right? Like Jake was going to play Todorovic no matter what because of his fighting style, his ability to finish. Now, for whatever reason, I guess this is a size difference. The line has moved against Todorovic heavily. He opened as, at least at Sugar House where I'm looking at in our model, he opened at like minus 195, it looks like, and he's down to minus 137. Just an insane line move. As a result, he's not completely, but pretty mispriced, and I put this in quotes if you're watching me, mispriced compared to his salary because he's 8,600 and only minus 137. But he can easily be the highest scorer on the slate, like without question. And so he at lowered ownership, he's the perfect high risk play. Let me see here. Real quick, E has a question in the chat, Jake. He says, if Ricci somehow wins, she's guaranteed to be in the optimal lineup, right? I don't know because she could just, like you said earlier, just push her up against the cage and somehow win a decision. So I don't think it's guaranteed, but it's still pretty likely, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, she's only available on DraftKings and the way she would win is either with an early armbar or by, grappling the whole time at her price. I mean, yeah, she's probably a lock if she wins because, I mean, if she won, she would have to have like 10 minutes of control time, probably a couple takedowns. And she's only 6,600. So the only way she wouldn't be in the optimal lineup is if we get a bunch of dogs that all score high and she gets outscored and, the right combination outscores her. But really good chance if she wins. Like I would say near lock, but I mean, nothing's ever a complete lock.
I know that's right. All right, and talk to me about this last UFC debut, Kamuela Kirk against Amrakani. Not a fight that the field's looking to target. Kirk just projected 11% on DraftKings. His opponent, Amrakani, one of the lowest at the top of the salary range, 21% projected ownership. But talk to me about Kirk and his outlook for this fight.
Yeah, so Amrakani is coming off the loss to Barboza. Crazy low volume. Like he wasn't able to do anything. I think he went 3 for 6 on takedowns. 2 of them came at the ends of the rounds, so he didn't really do anything with them. Amrakani is like a super slick submission specialist, but he doesn't normally score well because he's so hyper efficient. He'll get 1 takedown, 2 strikes, and a submission. Like every time. It's not like that happens sometimes. Like he never really scores well. His only big score came in his UFC debut. He landed like a flying knee in 8 seconds and got the quick win bonus. But ever since then, it's really hard for him to score well. And normally he's lower priced, so we still like playing him because he's a value play. But now at 9,400, it's super hard for him to return value. So then we look at Kirk, and Kirk comes in here. He's another BJJ black belt guy, but he went on Dana White Contender Series and took on Billy Quarantillo a couple of years ago. And he was dominating the first round in wrestling. And then he got completely gassed out. And then Billy just pieced him up for the entire second round. Basically almost finished him. As soon as the third round started, like the fight was over. I mean, Billy just ran over and started kneeing him in the face. And Herb Dean stopped the fight. So since then, he really hasn't been attempting takedowns. I don't know if he just realized that his cardio isn't made for wrestling, despite he's a BJJ black belt.
He was like,
So
"Fuck that." He said, "I'm not doing that
yeah,
again."
I mean, right. He saw how it worked out for him. I mean, he's just been purely striking with guys. He went up against a karate striker in his next fight, and he ended up losing a close decision. But he didn't even attempt a takedown against a guy that was a pure striker, which is interesting. So he's won his last 2 fights. The last one was weird. The guy just quit after the second round.
He literally retired, right?
That,
He like retired on the stool.
Yeah, like on the spot, right? He was just like, I can't do this anymore. He had just lost a Contender Series fight, and the guy had like 30 fights under his belt, and he was losing this fight. I think he realized, he's like, I missed my opportunity for the UFC. Yep. I'm tired of getting punched in the face. Like, I quit, and he just quit right then. So that went down as a round 2 KO, but he was winning. I mean, it's not like Kirk was losing the fight or anything. Like, I think he was gonna win, possibly get a finish. Kirk has a history of finishes. I mean, there's reason to think he has decent upside. But I'm more interested on FanDuel. Amrakani leads the slate on missed takedowns at 6 per 15 minutes. And, Kirk, we don't have a bunch of stats on him, but his takedown defense has looked pretty good. I mean, we haven't seen a ton of guys even really try to take him down, but in the few times we have, like, it's looked fine. I mean, he's got the jiu-jitsu background to rely on. He actually submitted Kevin Kroom, who's now in the UFC, back in 2018 in the first round. I mean, he has submission skills, but he's really just looking for knockouts. But I think he can get a ton of takedowns defended here. And I think he's actually a better striker than Amrakani. So despite being a massive underdog, I think he can win the stand-up battle. He just needs to avoid getting submitted, which obviously, like, that's easier said than done against a guy that's like really, really good at choking out opponents. But we have seen the line move in Kirk's favor, which is encouraging. So I think on FanDuel especially, you want to play him and sprinkle him in on DraftKings. But no one ever scores well against Amrakani, so that's something to keep in mind. It's probably going to be a lower scoring fight, regardless of what happens. But FanDuel specific play kind of for me for Kirk.
Until today, Amrakani's like lifting weights now for the first time, so maybe.
Yeah.
He starts brawling again.
Right, yeah, just crazy idea. He started working out for the first time.
So novel. All right, guys. Let's see. It's 2:17. We're here till 2:30 p.m. Eastern, answering your questions. Any questions about today's slate for DFS or betting? Throw it in the live chat. I see we got a decent amount of people in here, so just a quick reminder that we are running a contest for the next 35, 40 days. We're giving away $500 in DraftKings gift cards. Free to enter. All you have to do is enter your email address. You can gain more entries by following us on social media, watching our videos. The link is in the description below. You can't miss it. So go click there, enter your email, have a chance to boost your DraftKings bankroll. We always say play free rolls. This is the epitome of a free roll, so go play it. All right, question in the chat. Which fights should we target most likely to end up in the optimal lineup? So there's a great transition to our next segment. Which fights should we target? We want both sides of the fight if we're playing multiple lineups. So Jake, what are a couple fights that you're looking at that you think can produce a high score?
Yeah, so I have 3 specifically in mind. So it's going to be Tybura Harris. I think that one's either going to end with a Harris knockout in the first like 2.5 minutes, or else Tybura is just going to wear him out, take him down, ground and pound him out. And I think Tybura is going to get a second round knockout through ground and pound if he can survive the first 3 minutes. We saw Harris weigh in at 264 pounds, and he normally fights in the 250s. So that was kind of a red flag. Mm-hmm. The only other time he's fought that high was against Overeem. And he almost knocked out Reem in the first round. He came, blitzed him, knocked him down. The fight was kind of close to being stopped. It was his first fight back, after that, the whole tragic stuff with his stepdaughter. So a lot of people were like, oh, he came back too soon. So there's a lot of kind of excuses being made for why he's lost his last 2 fights. But he did almost finish Overeem. And then Overeem just took over midway through the first round, took him down, completely pounded him on the ground for the rest of the first round. Second round, same thing, finished the fight. I think it plays out pretty much similar to that fight. And the fact that he weighed in the same as that fight is just one more reason to think it goes that way. So Walt has like a really tiny gas tank, but he's super dangerous early on. He's also going to turn 38 a week from now. So you know how we feel about like older fighters, generally not a good thing. But I think he does have probably like a 20 to 25% chance to get a round 1 KO. And if he gets that, he's pretty much a lock to be in the optimal lineup on both sides. And on FanDuel, he should get some takedowns defended.
Yep.
one thing to note on Harris, he's never won a fight where he's been taken down, and Tybura is a takedown guy, so doesn't bode super well.
He better stuff him, because if not,
right,
it's a wrap.
Right. Yeah, but I don't see Tybura getting a first round finish, so he's really reliant on getting that second round finish, because I don't know if at his price a third round finish gets there. Maybe it does. And a decision, typically he scores like 90 points on DraftKings in decisions, but he would not score well on FanDuel in a decision. But I really don't see it going the distance. I mean, Harris does not have a 15-minute gas tank, so I think that ends in the first 2 rounds, either Harris round 1 KO or Tybura round 2 KO. I'm on the Tybura side, but I'm going to have a decent amount of Harris too. And then the next one is going to be Beza Ponzinibbio. Both guys are super reasonably priced. They're actually the same price on FanDuel at $15, which is going to make Ponzinibbio's ownership crazy low. Like every time when the underdog is priced the same as the favorite on FanDuel, it's always the underdog's super low owned. So he makes for an interesting leverage play. We just don't know if he's washed up. He was coming off like a 2-year layoff after a really bad staph infection. Got knocked out as a huge favorite in his last fight in the first round. He's trying to bounce back. We didn't see enough of him in his last fight to really know what to expect, but Beza is always super popular. So I think Ponzinibbio is an interesting leverage play, but I think most likely we're going to see a finish in the first 2 rounds. Beza basically just finishes everyone in the second round. So if you're betting, if that trend continues, plus 750 for his round 2 KO line. He has 3 straight round 2 finishes, although the last one was a submission, but Kashi Sato gets submitted by everyone. So I think that was sort of opponent specific. But I don't know. It could be lower volume. Ponzinibbio does not score well when he goes to decisions. So if he gets past the first round, I think Ponzinibbio is going to be in trouble, because all his fights are basically round 1 KOs or decisions. And with Beza, if it gets past the second round, I'm not sure if he's going to have the volume to score well in a third round, and definitely not in the decision. So you're relying on a finish in the first 2 rounds in that fight. And then
but it seems likely though.
Super likely. I like Beza's side of it in terms of winning. I like Ponzinibbio as sort of a leverage play. I'm going to have more Beza, but I also think Beza's going to be super popular, so it's always hard in tournaments. You want to get that leverage, but at the same time, he's probably going to get a KO. And at his price, if he gets a KO in the first 2 rounds, he's going to be in the optimal lineups. So it's a little bit of a tricky spot. I don't think you want to be over on Beza. I don't think there's much to benefit there. So I think you either want to be slightly under or match, and then Ponzinibbio, you probably just want to match there too. But I think it's going to be a really good fight, honestly. I think it's going to, both guys are super dangerous on the feet. I don't think we're going to see a ton of grappling, though, but it's going to be a good fight. And then the last one's going to be on the Dushko Rodriguez fight. That's another one. I think it's going to end in the first 2 rounds. All these fights I'm trying to target, they're going to end in the first 2 rounds, if you ask me. So that's why we're targeting him, is someone's going to get finished early. And that's just another one, it's going to be high volume. Both guys have been kind of prone to getting knocked out, but also really good at knocking people out. So all 3 of those, I think, are great fights to target. I'm going to have heavy exposure to both sides on both sites.
All right, good stuff, Jake. Let's see. We got some questions here coming in the chat. So we got 2 questions about the same fight, different questions. Let's see. Corey's asking, how do you feel about De La Rosa? And then we got another question that says, is plus 220 too wide for Lipski? Recency bias getting smashed in our last fight. Betting De La Rosa minus 275 seems wrong. Jake, if we look at the cover of the Daily Plug, De La Rosa is literally on the cover, and I think they may surprise a lot of people. She's near the top of the model. She's the perfect type of play that I love to play in high-risk contests, low-owned favorite with hidden upside, especially a female fighter. But Jake, answer the question about Lipski's line potentially being too wide, and then why we like De La Rosa so much.
Yeah, man. So I was not expecting De La Rosa to be the cover girl on the plug. Trust me, I was like, it's going to be Dushko or Fierro. And then I get to writing up De La Rosa late in the week, and it was just like the light bulb just clicked on. You're like, oh my God, this is like the perfect spot for her to explode. You look at her ownership. We have her projected at 16%, the lowest owned favorite on the slate. Lipski got absolutely dominated by Antonio Shevchenko, a pure Muay Thai striker who in her fights before and after got destroyed on the ground herself. And Lipski just got owned in that fight. Shevchenko got a round 2 KO through ground and pound. De La Rosa's 1-2-1 in her last 4 fights. So, I can't imagine anyone wants to play her at 9,300. But she's been attempting a ton of takedowns. Lipski has a 45% takedown defense, and she's been fighting strikers. She hasn't even fought a wrestler or grappler in her takedown defense. She's been taken down 6 times on 11 attempts against strikers. Stepin De La Rosa, who attempts, I think we're at eight attempts per 15 minutes, and I think that's going to just go up against Lipski. I think we're going to see a dominating wrestling performance that is really going to surprise people. So to answer the first question about Lipski, no, I think the line should be wider. I don't think she has a chance to win this fight. There's been times I actually liked Lipski going into the Carolina fight, and she got a round 1 knee bar submission. But this is not a time I'm looking to play her. I think she's going to have to keep the fight standing up. And De La Rosa has underrated boxing. So even if Lipski is able to keep it standing up initially, I don't think she's just going to come in and dominate. And eventually De La Rosa will get this fight to the ground and will dominate Lipski on the ground. It's going to happen. And I love De La Rosa to get a submission here. So I'm not betting the negative 275 line, but I love her submission line. I like her round props line. There's a slight chance she could get her first KO. All of her wins have come through submissions. I think she has 11 wins. I want to say 8 submissions. She's never had a KO, but I mean, who knows? If she's on the ground dominating, it's pretty easy to go from a choke to just ground and pound and to finish a fight that way. She's not going to knock her out on the feet, but her KO lines are pretty long. Although personally, I would rather just bet the round win line so you're covered because it's probably going to be a submission. But you can get like crazy long odds on the round KO lines. But I really, really like De La Rosa here. I'm going to be, tripling the field in terms of ownership. I think she's going to really blow some people away. I think she's going to come out here and absolutely just dominate in wrestling. I'm looking for easily double-digit takedown attempts, and I don't see Lipski putting up a lot of resistance on those.
I'm with you, man. She's my favorite play on the slate as well, especially when you factor in ownership. So to answer one of the questions in the chat, favorite 9K plays, I think De La Rosa certainly qualifies there. So it is 2:27. We'll stick around for a couple more minutes because we're running a little bit long here. Let's see if we missed any questions in the chat. Andre's asking about fading the main event. Yeah, if you missed it earlier, go back and rewind to the beginning. We do think it's a main event that you can fade because of potential low volume and the fact that there are a lot of potential high scorers on this slate as well. Definitely makes for a slate where you can be under the field, or if you're playing just one lineup, fading the main event in high-risk contests. Patrick's asking, who's your favorite underdog? Jake, I'll let you answer that, and then I'll give my own answer.
It's a tough one. I have a few guys that I think are decent, like Zalal, Kirk, Trinaldo. I don't know who my favorite one is. I think even Arroyo, he's in a fight where someone could score well, but that's a tough one. I would say Kirk on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I don't know. I have a decent amount of Walt Harris. I don't know. I'm kind of spreading it out on the dogs. So I don't have one. It's not like last time where I was super heavy on Bandera. I'm kind of spreading it out on some of these dogs. I think there's a lot of people that are alive. If I had to go the safest floor, maybe Zalal, just because he's invincible. So he's going to either get a submission or go to a decision. But I don't know. That's a tough one. I'm curious who yours is, though.
Yeah, no, I feel the same exact way. Normally, every slate there's one or two fighters that I can go heavy on and get heavy exposure to because I feel like the field is wrong or the line's wrong, whatever it may be. Not really the case. I'm not thrilled about any of these options. So like you, I'm just kind of spreading my exposure. I'm getting over the field on some of the super low owned ones, the 6 to 12% ones, kind of matching the 15 to 20% ones. So I would probably say Kirk or Zalal if I had to answer, but again, it's definitely a tough slate for that. A couple questions about Tom Breeze. Sorry, Eagles, who is a YouTube member and Discord member. Mr. Your question, buddy. Sorry about that. So thoughts on Tom Breeze. You and I were talking before the stream, Jake, about Breeze always really low owned despite the high finishing odds. Thoughts on him today?
Yeah, man, it's super weird. I was looking back, he was only 16 and 13% owned in his last 2 fights. One of those was against KB Bueller. How is he so low owned? I think it's a tough fight to get a finish.
To be fair, we all thought KB Bueller had a shot in that fight, though.
That guy's dead to me. I think Arroyo's a super tough guy to knock out. Breeze's, I believe his last 4 finishes have come by knockout. Arroyo's never been knocked out. He has been submitted twice, but they're both earlier in his career. I don't know. I think Breeze has a really high ceiling, but I don't trust him to hit it here. But he's going to be low owned, so he makes sense to have some exposure. He's coming off the loss. He's been alternating wins and losses for his last 6 fights. Coming off the loss, I heard an interview. He was talking about how that was just terrible preparation. He got quarantined in his room by himself. He couldn't train. It's terrible preparation for that last fight. He said the preparation was way better this time. I don't know. I think it's a hard spot for him to get a finish, but I think he's a sneaky under the radar guy who could get a round 1 or round 2 KO, possibly submission, and put up a big score. So I kind of like him as a low owned tournament play.
Absolutely. And one final guy to discuss before we talk about our stream parlay and get out of here. Jake, we haven't talked about Mason Jones, the most expensive fighter on the slate. He's minus 305 depending on where you look. $9,500 DraftKings, $23 on FanDuel. And it's really surprising to see the biggest favorite as just 28% owned, especially as a male fighter. Sometimes we'll get this and it's a female fighter and she'll go under owned. But Mason Jones, if we go back to the plug, has second highest chance of getting a finish on the slate, 42%. And he's only going to be 28% owned on DraftKings, maybe a little less. And Jake, I think the reason for that is the fact that, like we just talked about, there aren't that many attractive dogs to save money to spend $9,500 on a fighter. So a lot of times people are going to drop down a little bit from him. So I love him in tournaments. I even like him in low risk contests if you can afford it, because Jones has a massive ceiling, could easily be the highest score.
Yeah, man, I really like Jones, but I mean, you nailed it. Like, it's really hard to fit him in. There's so many mid-price guys people are going to want to play. Normally, people are trying to play like 2 high-price guys. I think this is a week where a lot of people only play 1, and it's hard to get up for Jones, And you have some other options there. I think Leavitt's going to be popular, so he's going to take some ownership off. We have a lot of high-priced guys here. We have a lot of people with a high chance for a finish, so it's going to spread it out on a 14-fight slate. I really like Jones. I think he's going to get a bunch of takedowns defended on FanDuel, which makes him even more interesting there. But he's only fought 1 time in the UFC. It was his first career loss. Absolute war. I mean, what a great fight. Everyone should go back and watch that. But he lost. He scored like 56 points in a decision, which a lot of people are just box score watching. So they see a guy that only has 1 fight. He lost. He scored 56 points. Now he's the most expensive fighter in the slate. I think they're going to look more at Levitt, who, he has 1 fight. He scored 120. So, and he's 500 cheaper. So naturally, they're going to be drawn more to that than the high price guy. And I think some people still think Patrice is decent, even though he's complete trash at this point. He's fought like just a few times in the last 5 years. Like, he's a pure one-dimensional grappler. He hasn't been doing good. I mean, his 1 win came against Damir Hadovich or whatever, who literally is like a turtle on his back. So, I mean, you can ignore that one.
I mean, I think just real quick, sometimes we worry about guys fighting against grapplers and potentially being more cautious. But Jones doesn't strike me the type of guy that's going to be cautious in any fight, no matter who the opponent is.
Yeah, man, he's got like a black belt in judo, black belt in BJJ, black belt in I forget, another one too. I forget, it's kickboxing or something like Muay Thai, but dude's really good, man, and he's just like crazy. He doesn't give a shit. Like, he's just gonna go out there and brawl, and Patrice is gonna be trying to take him down, and Jones is just gonna be smashing him in the face, defending takedowns. I love his chances to get a round 1 finish. He's coming off a decision loss. Like, he didn't get knocked out. He's not gonna come in shy. He's gonna come in here trying to prove himself. Like, he asked for the biggest, baddest dude they could throw him in his debut, and they gave it to him. And I mean, he narrowly lost. He could have won that decision. But I think now he's really going to be trying to prove himself in a much easier matchup. I think he's going to absolutely crush here. It's hard to say when he gets the finish. And as the highest priced guy, obviously he has to outscore all the other top priced guys. But I love him. I think he's a great play.
Yeah, and just to kind of put a bow on this, if you're playing tournaments today, as Jake said, a lot of people are going to look to the mid-range with some of the coin flip favorites with big finishing capabilities, obviously with Furo, with the mispricing, and as a result, many people aren't going to play 2 studs. So I think if that alone is a great differentiation spot in high-risk contests, just playing 2 studs and playing 2 underdogs that people aren't thrilled about, so that's certainly a way to go. All right, let's get out of here. It is 2:35. We got to finish it off with our stream parlay. We're about 0 for 25 so far this year. All it takes is 1. So, Jake, you give a bet. I'll give a bet. We'll tie it all together for a parlay and hope it hits. So who you got today?
All right, I'm going to go with De La Rosa wins by submission at plus 360.
All right, and I'll go with I didn't like a lot of the bets this week, but I'm going to go with Zalal to get a sub. And that's plus 1,000. So we got a plus 360. We got a plus 1,000. Yusuf's allowed to get a sub.
I like it. Let's go Zalal. He averages 1.4 subs a fight, so hopefully he can finally land one. I mean, he's always throwing them out there.
Yeah, dude, just finish it for once. Okay, so that'll do it for the show. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, make sure you are. Click the subscribe button below the video. Get notified whenever we go live or upload any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you like this UFC content. Lets us know to continue to make more of these types of videos. If you want to join our Discord channel, ask some more questions, talk about fights throughout the week. Jake and I and a couple other members are always talking about the fights, no matter what day of the week it is, leading up to the slate. So if you want to join that party, click the join button right below the video. Get access to our Discord channel. Check out Jake's work at MMA DFS.com. You can read the sheet where he writes up every fight on the slate, talks about betting and DFS implications. OccupyFantasy.com is where you can read the daily plug, which you see on screen here. Top plays, lineup strategies, and best bets for every UFC slate. And our Occupy model, which ranks every fighter on FanDuel and DraftKings with projected ownership. Final reminder, we're giving away $500 in DraftKings gift cards, no strings attached. All you have to do is enter your email address to enter. No purchase required, fully free. Link is in the description below. So follow Jake on Twitter at DFS_MMA. Follow me at Brian Jester FF. Follow us at Occupy Fantasy. Appreciate everyone listening. Good luck tonight and enjoy the fights.